All right. Welcome to another episode of the Music Guy Podcast. This is episode 59. My name's Al Rowe. I'm a music guy. I play guitar, sing, I write songs, and make records, broadcasting to you from the east end of Toronto in the Beaches, this wonderful community of the Beaches. It's a pretty warm January day today. Just took the dog out. Everything's muddy. He got muddy. It was a whole scene.
What a jerk.
Joining me on the line from Whitby, Ontario, guitarist, backup vocalist, composer, podcaster at large, Mr. Michael Hebbs. How are you, my man?
I'm good, man. You should have went higher with the yeah. I know you can go higher.
Yeah.
You actually sent me a vocal like warm up thing that it was just a lesson that you had done with a teacher, and you went really high on that. So
Yeah.
I want you to aim higher next time.
Okay. Next show we'll really go for it. We have a very special guest with us today. So excited that he could be here. And thanks for taking the time, man. This is one of the great bass players in Ontario and Canada, playing for David Boyd Janes, Kira Isabella, Corey Hotline, Marshall Dane, and many other artists. His YouTube channel, Benny the Bassman, has over 22,500 subscribers, that is. And he's just a great bass player, a great guy. It's Mr. Ben Miller. Welcome to the show, dude.
Hey, man. Thank you so much. And for the record, I think your yeah was great, dude.
Oh, thanks.
You know, he had more in him, you know?
Maybe
I
one day
got kind of starstruck.
Maybe
I've been listening to a lot of the podcasts. And that yeah got me going, dude.
Got you fired up. Maybe we'll
got me
cut
fired
them
up.
all,
Positivity going on.
maybe we'll cut each one.
Yeah,
from
basically,
each
dude, I'm all
episode.
about positivity. You know, you got to lift up the artist.
There you go. There you
yeah,
go.
it was great.
I mean, so yeah, you're not just a player, but if I'm not wrong, you band lead those bands as well.
Yeah, yeah, maybe, but I mean, you know, it's like the bass player roots run deep, man.
Yes.
There's a
Gotta lift everyone up.
There's a few bass player MDs out there. Like I feel like that's a combination that works well.
You know what? Yeah, it does. And probably one of the best reasons that it does is because bass players are already used to thinking about the band as a whole, right? A lot of other instruments, just kind of by nature of the instrument, maybe are a little more selfish, and they should be selfish because they're a lot more soloistic or a lot more of the lead instrument, and so a lot of their time is spent thinking about how they come across as their own entity on a stage. But a bass player's job is to make everyone else sound good. So I feel like that's probably pretty natural that a bass player is thinking about the whole band, you know?
Yeah, that's a
Exactly.
great.
Like the guitar solo needs to be louder and faster.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
It's my contribution.
some good
And you
words
do
of
it well,
wisdom
man.
there. The bass player has to make everybody else sound good. I like that a lot. So
Complementary instrument, man. We're the ultimate complementary instrument.
yeah, hell yeah. So, I mean, let's start. There's so many places we could go here. Let's start with, I mean, what you've been up to during quarantine. It feels so long since any of us had like a real. I mean, I've had a couple of gigs that have been sort of, you know, in plexiglass and online and stuff like that. But since any of us played like a true show at a festival or anything, it feels like that's miles away, you know, behind us and ahead of us. But you've got a hell of a YouTube channel going on. Can you just give us a synopsis of what's happening with the channel, and if people want to check it out, what are they going to find there?
Thanks, man. I appreciate that a lot. And yeah, I will. So there was definitely a super dark period during this whole thing where like my whole mental state went boom, and I didn't post anything to the channel. And maybe we can talk about that. I know you and Mike did an awesome mental health episode that I checked out, and this kind of falls in line with that a lot. But I've recently started up again, so it's youtube.com/c for creators slash Benny the Bassman, all one word. And what I do there is it's fully by request now, which is great because there's enough people out there that listen to it that they submit enough requests that I'm just backed up forever on requests, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But I take requests and I the requests are for songs, and so I'll listen to them, and then what I'll do is I'll write out note for note the entire song, no matter how long it is. I'll write out the notation and I'll also write out the tabs. So people who can read notes and people who read tabs can both benefit from it. And then I'll slap a camera on myself and I'll play through the whole thing kind of in one take. And then I'll kind of superimpose the notes and the tabs on top of that and just throw it up on YouTube. And I try to do one of those every week, which can be quite a challenge sometimes. And so basically the idea is that it just helps people who may not have the sort of the ear developed enough to be able to learn tunes by themselves to just follow along with what I'm doing and learn a song from scratch.
Also, too, it's really high resolution. You know what I mean in terms of the like what
4K.
what you're doing.
Da, da, da.
Well, yeah.
Oh, you mean like
What you're doing? Yeah, because like I don't know,
Like,
you get like a
I
bass tab for like a riff, like something like Sweet Home Alabama. You know,
Right.
fucking everybody kind of plays it mostly right, but there's no tabs that's like this is every single fill.
Dude,
And when
you nailed it, man. And like I'm such a perfectionist, so like if I go online and look up a song, any song you look up, there's going to be every player on every instrument playing it wrong times 1,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's sort of like, this is how I play it or whatever, and it's like 80% at best. And I'm such a total perfectionist that's kind of what frustrated me. And I was like, well, I could probably do this better, So then I sort of took it upon myself because I also know like there was a different company that I partnered with that was interviewing me, and they were asking me about American Pie, the Don McLean like folk masterpiece, which is like a perfect example. So like you can learn how that song goes as far as the chords because there is a chord structure. But as far as the bass line goes, there's never the same passage played twice in that whole song. It's all like really, really cool, sort of improvising on a theme kind of stuff. And so it's not going to do you any good to learn how one half of the song goes because the other half is going to be completely different. So like that song is a perfect example where like I learned the whole thing and wrote the whole thing out and learned how to play the whole thing so that because I know that as far as bass players go, we all have different tastes. So like if you ask 100 different bass players what their favorite line in American Pie is, they'll probably have 100 different answers for you.
Yeah.
So and I want to serve everyone. So that's why that was the idea, just to totally get super anal about it and lift the entire thing note for note and then play it in one take. So you show people how to do it, and then you also have the notes and the tabs so that everyone can hopefully learn.
It's an outlet for your perfectionism.
Totally. Satisfy it on a weekly basis.
And then there also would be like a link where people could download the notation and tabs so they could actually have a full size page to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. So because of the nature of how YouTube works, which I completely agree with for the record, I can't make any money off of YouTube because I have the original music playing behind my stuff because I feel like that context is super important. So I've chosen to make it impossible for myself to actually earn money off of this from YouTube. And I agree with that because as soon as I post the video, YouTube's like, no, this goes to Don McLean. This doesn't go to you, Ben.
Yeah.
So I have a Patreon account, which is www.patreon.com/BennyTheBassman. And Patreon, it just allows people who are fans to sign up to be patrons of internet creators of any sort. So people can pledge certain amounts of money, like $2 a video that I post, or $4 a video, and then they will get certain benefits, including charts and other things like weekly lessons and all this kind of stuff. And then I also recently just partnered with a site called Jelly Note, which are some awesome people working out of Europe. They're in Paris, and they actually publish creators charts and get all the appropriate copyright and then sell them to anyone who wants them on like a one-off
Shit.
Oh, that's
basis, which
great.
is actually really, really great. Yeah, and so it's perfect. The site is Jellynote, JELLYNOTE / creators / Benny the Bassman again, and that's where you'll see all my charts. But every chart that I have on YouTube is also for sale there. And so what they do is they just deal with all the copyright and sort that all out, and then give the creators a bit of the money that's left over
Yeah.
from the sale of the chart. And it's very inexpensive. It's like $4.70 in euros. So that might
Yeah.
translate into like, I don't know, $6 or $7 Canadian per chart. And they have practice tools right on there, so you can see my chart and play along with it and change the speed and all that stuff like right on the
That's
website.
super cool.
Oh,
I mean, the
That
sweet
was
thing about it too is, like, just because you can't make money from the views,
Mhm.
it's like I feel like YouTubers, a good chunk of the money that they make is not from views. It's from like the other things like you're talking about, Patreon. People release courses, which would totally make sense for you as well too if you did, or something
Totally.
like that. You know what
But
I
I
mean?
mean,
Like,
this is not a complaint at all because I agree with it, right? Like this is the
yes,
other artist music. We're all musicians here.
yeah.
So if we made a popular song, we would want to make money off of other people reposting that song too, you know?
yes,
Yes.
yeah.
So it is correct for sure. There
It
might
really
be room to improve there as far as like, because it's for education, maybe you can sneak some
Sure.
fair use ideas in there,
Yeah.
but no, that's the way it should work for sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean,
And it wasn't really about money for me as it was about just helping people learn stuff. I was more just
Yeah.
triggered by bad covers. So I wanted to do my best to make good
Have
covers.
you ever
Yeah.
showed up to a gig where it's like you asked them, like this usually happens in bar bands, but I'll be like, oh yeah, do you do it like the record? They're like, yeah, we do it like the record, and then you get there and it's like, man, it is not like the record. Like there's
mean,
that
what-
one song, Whiskey Girl, and it starts in a different key and then changes to the key that it's in.
Yeah.
And I remember I like started it in the other key, and
Oh, yeah.
everyone looked at me, and they didn't know that they were wrong, and I was like,
Yeah. I mean, once or twice, I could say.
yeah, yeah.
Safely. Totally, man. Yeah. That's just, I mean, we're musicians, dude. By definition, we're lazy. We're lazy
Yeah.
motherfuckers. We
Yeah.
do the least amount of work possible to get the gig done by definition. So, yeah.
Story of my life.
I have a technical question that probably only serves me, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. How do you get the tab
Do it.
to show on the video and like scroll
Great
through?
question. I'm
Yeah.
so glad you answered this, Al. Let me alienate 90% of everyone who's listening right now to tell you. So I record everything separately. So I got Pro Tools over here for recording audio, and I got my Lumix GH5, my like DSLR camera over
Okay.
here recording video, and I record them separately. And then I write the chart in Sibelius, and then in Final Cut I put everything together. So basically, I output once I finish writing the chart and tabs and everything in Sibelius, you can export a Sibelius chart as a video.
Oh,
So I export that as a video, and then I import that into Final Cut along with a video of myself playing and everything. And then the fun part is you really get to know which tunes were recorded to a click track or not, because like if
Sure.
I figure out the tempo is like 110, you'll get a Steely Dan tune and it's like perfect. I don't have to do a thing to it. But then you'll get like some jazz recordings where it fluctuates by like 10 BPM over the course of the song.
right.
So then I'm in Final Cut with my score, like changing the speed of the score every few
Oh,
seconds
man.
to make sure that it still lines up.
That's
That's
brutal.
great. That's great that the feature's in there to be able to change the speed.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
always
Final
surprised.
Cut's sick. Final Cut is
Yeah.
like, I guess, kind of industry standard on the Mac side, and then like maybe Adobe Premiere on the PC side. But yeah, Final Cut is great. Apple R, and then you just say like, okay, let's go to 101% or 102%, and then you just sort of say, yeah, you have to go through the whole. It's a process, man. It takes me a long time,
Yeah.
but it's worth it and really gratifying when it all comes together. And people
Yeah.
have there's been a lot of great comments, so people seem to be appreciating it, which is also re-gratifying for me.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing it for?
I started, so I quit my day job like Christmas 2017, started a YouTube channel January 2018.
Nice.
There you go.
And yeah, it was like very slow going at the beginning, as one would expect. I think it took me 3 months to get 100 subscribers, because I'm not a guy who's very proud of myself, and it's kind of advertising what I'm doing is very
Sure.
uncomfortable and difficult for me. So I just kind of did it and didn't really tell anyone I was doing it, and just sort of let it grow organically, purely organically from the internet. Which was the cleanest way for me to do it, I guess, because like I said, it feels very cringy for me to go out there and like advertise myself,
Sell yourself.
Mhm.
especially at the beginning. So yeah, it was like it took 3 months to get from 0 to 100 subscribers, and then it just seems to go faster and faster. 3 months to get there, and then maybe another 7 or 8 months to get to 1,000.
Nice.
So goes faster and faster.
And that's doing a video a week.
It's like exponential.
Yeah, that was doing one video a week.
Yeah. So how long does it take, man? Like how long does it take to learn to lift the tune, write the chart? I'm guessing editing the video takes longer than anything else. Am I right about that?
It really depends on how hard the tune of the week is. like I said, after the dark COVID times when I finally got my head on straight and was able to come back, I did The Chicken by Jocko as my first
Oh boy.
first episode back, the full like 7-minute thing. And
Oh my
again,
gosh.
it's like Jocko's just going nuts through the whole thing, and
Yeah.
no two passages are the same. So that one I probably worked on for like 3 weeks. But
Wow.
lifting that takes forever, because that's like a 7 or 8 minute tune of all 16th notes.
Yeah.
So I think probably the lifting or practicing may be somewhat equal as far as how difficult it is, depending again on how actually just hard the tune is. And then editing is like, you're kind of looking at like my Friday. Like Friday is recording the song, editing it together, uploading it, and doing all that stuff. That's Friday gone, basically.
Yeah.
But then Monday to Thursday is like lifting it and practicing it.
Wow.
Fuck.
So it's essentially a full-time job to make a video a week.
It may be like 2 to 3 hours a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Maybe not like full time, but
Yeah.
definitely a good 2 to 3 hours per day.
And
It's nice
sure.
because it keeps you like moving on the instrument. You
Well,
know what I mean?
that's one of the
Yeah.
biggest reasons why I kept doing it. Obviously, it's great to get feedback, and everyone, yeah, not everyone, obviously. You've got people who absolutely hate my ass inexplicably, but
You did
a
it
lot of
too
people.
right.
Yeah, exactly. Or like I made the one mistake of posting like a metal tune, and I just got
Sure.
obliterated because I'm like not a metal bro, and I'm playing it all wrong.
You don't use a pick?
Sometimes, but yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But that was the other thing, is that it forces me, especially during this, where none of us are working or have the ability even to play for people. Yeah, it's great because it just forces me to pick up the instrument, man, and keep practicing, keep my chops up. So that's been a really, really good excuse as well.
so speaking of like perfectionists, so if you're doing the recording, like will you record until you get a through take that you're absolutely happy with? Will you, or are you super hard on yourself about that, or will you do it like an edit, or will you just let there be a couple mistakes in there if that's what happens, kind of thing? What's your? We were kind of talking before we started about like how perfectionist we can be, and how that can sort of cause us to not complete things and not do things and put stuff out there. So I guess the deeper meaning to this question is like, how do you sort of govern that, and what's your approach there?
That's a great question. It's two parts maybe, so I'll answer them both separately. So first, on the more surface level, when I'm recording these things, I'm really trying to do them all in one take.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really trying to do them all in one take. And usually I'm recording between like 5 and 10 takes to get there.
Yeah.
And I'll record until like my brain goes foggy and I'm just like, you can tell we've all kind of done this enough where it's like there's a part where you're warming up and kind of nervous, and then there's a part where you're like really in the zone and you're playing well, and then I feel like there's a part where it's just like every take gets worse again,
Yes.
Oh yeah.
where your brain is just gone. So I usually try to get until the point where I'm like super at the peak of where my brain is allowing me to be at the moment. And then yeah, like so 99% of everything you're seeing on my channel is one take. And then if there's like one clanker where I'm just like, ugh, I just missed that one note, or like hit a fret and it buzzed really hard or whatever, then I'll just take, I never like overdub, but I'll just take from another take.
Yeah.
That's just like
I
one
see.
note or two notes that are just like really out there and just going to ruin the experience for people if they hear it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But it's also sort of like I don't edit every mistake. Like you'll hear mistakes on the channel. It's just, but that's
Yeah.
kind of part of life too, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we all make mistakes, and that's part of a very deep part of what being a musician is, I feel. But yeah, if there's any really really bad parts that just won't help somebody learn the song properly, if I leave that mistake in, then I'll just sort of I'll just fly it in from another take or whatever. So yeah, 99% of everything is all one, and then there's one or two overdubs here and there if I need them.
Nice.
And then and then I guess the other part about perfectionism and doing the stuff in the first place is like the amount of analysis paralysis that us musicians, I think, subject ourselves to, especially if there is anybody out there that's looking to start a YouTube channel to do with music, can be really detrimental. Like I feel like we're trained to be so perfectionistic, right? Because we got to be on stage, and with an artist, maybe it's pretty high stakes. You got to play the right notes, and you got to like really come to rehearsal prepared. You never want to look like you're unprepared, or you never want to admit that you're unprepared or make a mistake in front of people. We got to be stoic. We got to be perfect all the time.
Mhm.
So I feel like when that the problem is that's not compatible with like weekly posting on the internet. It's just not.
Yeah.
Especially at the beginning when you don't really know what you're doing. Those two things are very incompatible. Perfectionist musician always presenting a perfect product over here versus like bearing your soul online, putting a camera on you and like posting something online every week over here. It's like, this is totally real and you're going to screw up 100 times over here, and yet you're supposed to be completely perfect at the same time. It's like those two things don't mesh at all. So I feel like a lot of people are like, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. And then they spend the next 2 years trying to create the perfect YouTube video,
Yeah.
They'll like buy all this gear, and then they'll like, record something, watch it back, cringe at themselves, be like, oh, that's not good. I got to do a better one. And then like, they'll literally never post anything because it's never going to be up to that. You're what's the word I'm looking for? You're vulnerable
Standard?
as you do that.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's like records. I see some people who are almost afraid to release like anything, like just beginner artists who are like afraid to release, a song, and it's like, well, yeah, it's your first song,
right. Yeah, exactly. But the thing is that people kind of have in their mind that you're going to release one song and that song is going to go huge and you're just going to explode, and that's like how it works, which is never how it works.
Yes.
Literally never how it works. Like you guys have all heard the saying, I'm sure it takes half your life to become an overnight success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like the first video that catapults someone to stardom is nowhere near their first video guaranteed. It's just the first one that most people have seen. But there's a lot of other stuff that goes. There's a whole lifetime of practice that goes into it, and a whole lifetime of doing your creative stuff before you get to that point. So what I would say to anyone who's actually just looking to start any sort of a creative YouTube channel is just start, man. Just like make something and then just post it.
Yeah.
Just put it out there, because it's also kind of nice, like 2 or 3 years down the road, you go back to those early ones and you're like, oh man, look at how crap I was compared to like how you are now. It's a fun sort of roadmap, or it keeps you honest as far as where you've come. But it's way more important to just start, because the thing is, no one's going to see that first YouTube video anyway.
Yeah.
Like you've got 0 subscribers, you hit post, there's going to be 0 people watching it, man.
Yeah.
except
Yeah.
for maybe your family and good friends. Like no one else is going to watch it, so it's okay. But it's more important in my opinion to just get started, and then you gradually improve and you learn as you go. Like what I mean, let me turn it back to you guys if it's okay. Like what was your first podcast like, and how did you guys decide to start it?
I'm trying to think of which was the first.
The first
I don't
podcast
even know what we
was
talked about.
us just giving our own kind of biographies of like where we came from, how we got into music, what kind of stuff we've done. You know, I'll say this, like I edited the crap out of that podcast. I probably spent
Totally.
like 3 hours editing that podcast easily. And you know, now, and not to say that we're, you know, significantly better than that, but like now I'll spend, you know, far less time editing because I'm better at editing, and also like I know what to look for. And I think we're just our flow is a little bit better. We're both speaking better, so there's hopefully less pauses and ums and ahs and that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, but you learned on the job, right? You learned
Oh,
as
yeah.
you
That's
went.
exactly
Yeah.
it. Yes.
yeah. So I mean, I'm sure if you
And-
listen to that
and
first
the
one, it'd be a
follow-up-
mess.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, the follow-up question would be, how long did you guys talk about doing this podcast before you actually started doing it?
Al just brought it up.
I think I just.
But
I think,
to be honest, I wanted to do a podcast for the longest time, and I just never said anything to anyone.
Right.
But
there you go.
Al,
I think we had both been thinking about wanting this sort of creative outlet. Just coincidentally, we were both really interested in doing this, and yeah, I mean, it took us moving in together, as you know, just because we were two dudes who need a place to live, and you know we're friends or whatever. And then it took that, and then me being like, all right, well, if I want to do this, like, you know, I think Mike would be a great co-host, and we're literally in the same house, so there'll never be an excuse why we can't do it. and then,
Right.
And then
Right.
it just kind of worked out.
Fair
But you're
enough.
right, though. There was that the germination of that idea like happened so much earlier. So it does take a long time
sure.
for to take that leap into any sort of thing.
Absolutely.
it's like I think the shutdown, or just like the COVID, has kind of forced a lot of people to be more present on social media too, as well. Like I know there are tons of artists, and like even, you know, myself, it's just like, oh man, I wish I put more videos out there. And it's like they're starting to do it. And it's like I guess there's no excuse not to, you know, like it's definitely just fear.
100% fear.
Yeah.
100% fear.
Yeah.
Love that fear.
I mean, if it's something that
Bless
you
that fear.
want to do, you should do it. If it's not for you, then I don't think you should feel that there's a negative pressure to get online and put yourself online, because as we've talked about in the past, there's a lot of negatives and mental health sort of stuff that is working against you in the social media universe. So if it's not something that, if you're not enjoying the process of like what you're saying, Ben, it was like your first video was whatever, and then your second one was a little bit better, and your third one was a little bit better, and like every week you're excited about, I get to lift this tune now. Okay, sweet. Oh, this has there's so many cool licks in here I never realized, and like I'm learning all this stuff. I'm playing my instrument, having fun. All right, people are engaging. Now I'm teaching. Like if you don't enjoy that process, you know, then you're gonna really have a tough time, because
Burn yourself out.
if you're just looking at the results of like how many views did I get, how many subscribers did I get, how much money did I make? God forbid, that would be a tough pill to swallow, man. Like,
What's your hourly rate on Twitch now, Al?
yeah, I
mean,
think it's less than $1 an hour for sure. You know what I mean? But
Oh yeah.
but it's an outlet, and it's fun
I mean,
to
what's-
feel like I'm playing for people, right? So
100%. But I mean, like, what's our hourly rate anytime we pick up an
True.
instrument? Either
Yeah.
it's probably less than $1 an hour that we actually
Yeah.
make compared to the time we actually work on our instruments. You know, whether it's at home or not. But Al, I completely agree, man. That's probably a microcosm of the entire music industry, the way you just explained it. Like, if this is not for love, you're gonna burn out and do something else, you know, quickly
Yeah.
anyway. Because you know, you could apply that even to live performing, which is arguably one of the funnest things we all get to do. But there's so much else that goes into it that's not as glamorous as the onstage part looks,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh
that
yeah.
that if you don't truly love the whole thing, then you're not going to stick with it anyway. So yeah, I think that's a beautiful microcosm for the whole music sector. Is like you got to really love what you're doing, or it's not going to last because there's too
True.
much hardship there, and then you got to
It's like-
figure out how to pay rent.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, well, the one thing with YouTube and all the social media and performing in music, it's like if you obviously you don't want to force things, but say for instance with YouTube, maybe your thing's not doing transcriptions, maybe you just want to do a vlog. There's so many different ways that you could like pivot. You know, same with social media. Will was saying even with the agenda, you guys were talking about, oh, we're gonna make more of an effort to, you know, reach out to clients and, you know, thank them and, you know, just keep in touch with them. And he's like, oh, I don't want to be too stinky about stuff. And I'm like, well, you don't have to be stinky. Like everybody has their own way of doing social media that sort of suits their personality, you know? So if you're like, this seems like I'm selling myself too much and, you know, I don't want to be that guy who's like, hey guys, so proud to have you here. My subscribers are the best, you know? You don't have to be that, which is cool. You know, you could just post a video of you playing fucking Prince guitar on Instagram and, you know, not mention anything or not tag Wendy from Prince, and then she doesn't fucking respond because, you know, she's too cool to fucking hang with the guy who lives with you.
Sounds like that was getting a little personal.
Yeah,
there.
that took a turn.
Might have been-
I think
Yeah,
people,
exactly, man.
I think people put too much emphasis on promotion, and maybe I'm wrong about this, because obviously I'm not an expert, but I feel like there's too much emphasis on promotion and not enough emphasis on the quality of the content that you're producing and the value that you're giving to the people who are viewing it. So, I don't know that you can reasonably expect hordes of people to flock to your content if it's kind of self-indulgent, like, you know, I'm just playing like me, like my Twitch stream, and this is even like I'm just playing songs I like I'm not, I don't expect thousands of people to be interested in this. I'm doing it because I think it's fun, and there are a few people that are into it, and that makes it more fun. But like, if you're producing content that brings value to people in terms of like they're out there looking for how do I play this Tower of Power song, and you're the best resource for that, everybody's going to funnel over there too, right? So I think if you're really concerned about getting a lot of viewership or subscribers or what have you, which I don't even think you necessarily should be in the first place, but if you are concerned with that, you know, put yourself in their shoes. Like, why would you go watch you if you were them? It's like, well, because I'm like, I want to know this thing. In the case of Ben's channel, I want to know how to play this song, and Ben's the guy who knows how to do that,
and the song that nobody knows,
and he
how
can
to
show
do.
me how to do it in a way that I can understand and is accessible to me. And you know, so I think it's like a perfect combination of that. So yeah, so I mean, I've been thinking about this whole concept a lot recently because I do want to grow my audience on Twitch and for the podcast and everything else, and it did occur to me, it's like maybe I should do a few lesson videos on YouTube and see what that does, and maybe if there's you know, maybe that could be an extra facet of the things that I'm doing. And it's like, hey, if you like this video, I also got this cool podcast, maybe come check that out if you know what I mean. And like that, but then at least I'm providing value. I'm not not that, you know, Facebook advertising is a that's also maybe a thing you should be doing, but it's like if you're just getting in people's faces, you know, versus what if you could also be providing them with some value, then they would, you know, want to come see you instead of being shown you. You know? I don't know if that made any sense.
Oh, exactly. 100%. No, you got to start from the quality of the content, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think, you know, because I went through all the like YouTube creator videos when I was starting the channel, you know, because YouTube has a bunch of really good resources for people starting out. And one of the things they said that really hit me was like, no matter what your crazy niche is, Like maybe your thing is like finding warthogs in the wild and then like playing a song to them when you find them. Like there there's like a group of people on the internet right now who will watch that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's an audience for that. Like do
I'm
you
one of them.
underwater basket weave? Sick, dude. There's people
Yeah.
out there who want to watch, who literally want to sit at home and watch you do that.
Yeah.
So like starting from that place of just knowing that no matter what the niche is, there are people out there that will want to consume that if it's good enough. Then basically you realize that the only trick, well, there's two tricks. One, make the content that people want to see, which is the first trick.
What a
Like,
trick.
don't it is, man. Like don't
Yeah,
don't,
it
don't
is,
get bogged
yeah.
down in the analysis
Yeah.
of it. But then two is just figure out how to reach those people,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
that's it. So like those people are out there, period.
Yeah.
Full stop. It's
Mhm.
your job to just reach them. That's all. So like maybe maybe what that means is that like, advertising or getting in people's face is a good thing, but you got to have the quality to back it up.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
can't just get in people's face without having something to give them in the first place.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's like a moral imperative, you know?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that makes
That
a lot
makes
of sense.
sense.
So, if I don't know if I think we've kind of hit all the notes that are in the notes here. But if we just shift gears for a second, you had mentioned that you took a break from it. Did you want to sort of share what was going on at that point and talk about that, or
Sure. Yeah.
if you're comfortable with
Respect to, yeah, absolutely. No, I respect to Michael Hebbs in the mental health episode on this podcast.
Hey.
Man, so music is like very deeply important to me. Both my parents were professional musicians, my grandparents were professional musicians, my
Did
sisters
not know
are
that.
professional musicians. Like literally, I'm the 11th pro musician since my grandparents' era in my family.
it. Wow.
So like music is very deeply important to me, and playing it for people and making people happy is like a purpose in my life. It's like a big purpose. And other than that, I'm a really physical guy, so I love to get exercise, and I was going to like a fight gym, and that was a
yes.
really big part of my mental health as well. Just like exercising to the point of complete exhaustion. So those two things together were really my support structure as far as like my own mental health, right? I was getting to play shows and work on music, and that was rewarding and keeping me propped up. And then going to Krav Maga and getting my ass kicked, and punching people and stuff until I was exhausted and could hardly breathe was like the other half that kept
Yeah.
me like mentally in shape. And then, March hit, and both of those things disappeared at the exact same time,
Mm.
right? So the music was all gone. Nobody could play gigs anymore, which I completely agree with, for the record.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
and then also, obviously, because we're all like running around punching each other, sweating on each other at the Krav gym, the gym is closed at the same time, as it should
Yeah.
be.
Yes.
So my entire like mental health apparatus just like evaporated overnight, and it probably took like 1 month before. And again, like you said, Mike, I'm not a doctor, and I actually haven't ever had this professionally diagnosed, but I'm very confident that I was depressed.
Yeah.
It took 1 month before like it really took hold. And really for me, how it manifested was just like a severe apathy, like severe apathy towards wanting to create anything. Like, I'd post a video on YouTube, and then it would take me 2 or 3 weeks to post another one, and then it might take me a month, and then I stopped altogether. And I'd look over like at my basses over there, and the thought of practicing made me actually feel sick. Like I felt
Yeah.
ill at the thought of picking up an instrument and practicing.
Mm.
Which is something that had never happened to me before. It was really scary because like music is, like I said, is so important to me, and I completely not only lost the desire to do it, but started being negatively, I started feeling awful in myself at the thought of doing it, which was a really, really bad time. And I got really insular. I didn't return phone calls. People were checking in, and I just never respond. So I'm pretty sure that's depression.
Sounds
or at
like
least it was for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was like so if you go on my YouTube channel, you'll see there's like, maybe March, April, and then like nothing until October.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
October, November. And that was me just trying to sort myself out and deal with it. I'm lucky that I have an awesome fiance who's actually supposed to be my wife at this point, but is not because we could not get married because our wedding was scheduled for November.
There you go.
But we lived together, and she was also unemployed pretty much at the same time, so we kind of held on to each other throughout a lot of this and like got through it.
Yes.
And I was also lucky that the one artist that we mentioned at the beginning, David Boyd Janes, we ran weekly rehearsals for a lot of the pandemic as well. We did it safely, and everyone in the band was being very responsible with everything that everyone that they met up with, and we wore masks and stuff in the rehearsal space. But we kept rehearsing, so at least that was like a lifeline as far as one thing I could look forward to per week and work on. All of these tunes, and as MD, I could kind of come up with arrangements and work on cool stuff. So I had one thing keeping me going music wise every week until things really got bad, and then of course we canceled rehearsals.
Yes.
But yeah, it was a hard time. It was a really hard time for me. But the awful thing about that kind of depression, or at least how it hit me, was that you don't notice it in a like bam, you're depressed. It's more like a very gradual, just like removal of feeling
Yes.
until there's nothing left, until you just don't feel at all. So it's not like you're like, oh, this is terrible, I'm depressed, I want to fight this. It's more just like you just gradually feel less and less until it's just gray. There's just nothing.
Yeah.
So it's not even like you really realize what's happening to you while you're in it. At least that's how it hit me.
Yeah. And then you like almost reach a point where you're like, oh fuck. You know,
Yeah,
at least
and
for
then
me,
you're
I
like-
realized I was like, I gotta get some fucking help.
Literally, yeah. Or I was,
Yeah.
and you know what? Even the face you made there, Mike, is like I looked at some videos where I made it, and like my eyes were half closed. And I'm like, why am I like this? Like, what is going on? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah. It's like you have to look at yourself from outside because the disease or the illness is such that you hardly realize it when you're in
Yeah.
yourself.
It's
But
funny.
yeah, man.
I treat these things with such like humor, so I shouldn't be like laughing, but it's more so just
No.
like I can really relate. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it's
Yeah.
like that's the biggest thing. Like I have students. I have this one student who has OCD, and I'm like to her like there's like a strength in that in the same sense. Like yeah, like obviously you want to like you're getting help and all that. That's great. But I mean, she's different than your average bear because of that. You know, like her attention to detail is better. Obviously, you know, you can't lean too hard into the OCD because you know that'd be bad. But like, you know, it makes you almost like a superhero in a way. You know, like the same with
Right.
me. Like, I don't know, but
Totally.
yeah,
No, 100%. We're all idiot savants over here. Like we, you know, yeah.
that's exactly it.
Totally.
I fucking hope I am, man.
Yeah, 100%. And I should say that for me, and again, this is not medical advice, so please don't listen to anything that I say in terms of yourself. But for me, what really helped me start getting out of it was I changed my diet pretty radically.
Oh, okay,
And,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that actually contributed a lot. I was eating the standard Canadian diet for a while there, and then I switched to. I'd seen some examples, some pretty extreme examples of musician friends of mine that have been doing the carnivore diet. You know, it's just
Sure.
like keto plus kind of
Yeah,
thing,
yeah,
like
yeah.
pretty much only eating meat. And again, I know this isn't for everyone, but
Yeah,
I started that, and it pretty much within 2 or 3 weeks, my brain unfogged and totally
Yeah.
unclouded, and I was able to have initiative again. I was able to
Yeah.
take the initiative to start things again. So you can pretty much correlate a lot of projects that I started to like 2 or 3 weeks after I changed my diet pretty radically. So I was
just,
lucky
like,
to have
take
found
better
that.
care of yourself. Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, it's almost like whatever it is, like making a change of sorts, like however little, you know, like you see those videos where they talk about like, oh, make your bed and shit like that, and it's like even
Mm.
for me that was the thing. It's like just make your bed, you know, like if every day you can make your bed, it's like something to be proud of, you know, like that for me that was like great advice, you know, it was a good start for me, you know.
100%. Respect yourself and everything that you do and
Yeah.
start there. But when you're in the depths of depression or whatever it was, you can't. That's impossible. You know,
Yep.
like if you or it could be close to impossible at least. It's like if you feel like that for a second, where you're like, oh, I should really make my bed, and then depression's like, how about you just sit over here and watch Netflix instead.
Yeah, it doesn't fucking
Yeah.
matter anyway. Still make your bed. The
Yeah.
world's fucking ending.
Or like you'll like get up and you're like, I'm gonna make my bed. Depression's like, no, you're good.
No, thank you.
Just don't do it instead. So
Yeah.
you know, that can be
Yeah, no.
that was a real challenge.
Yeah.
Real challenge, and I know we're not alone, man. I know like
Yeah.
so many people in our industries, like that's our purpose, man. Like I look at you guys, and it's like such a big part of both your lives is this damn thing. I've played in so many bands with both you guys, and it's
Yeah.
like we live this stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
What we
Yep.
do, and it's to have it taken away, and we're through virtually no fault of our own, right? We can't blame ourselves. It's not like we screwed something up really badly.
No.
It's just like this
yeah.
was happened to us.
I
Yeah.
don't think that I caused COVID, but I can't be positive.
Yeah, man. So
yeah, man.
it's
Well,
rough. It's rough.
I'm
Shout out to all you guys suffering.
Yeah, yeah, thanks a lot for sharing that, man. And I think it's like I'm
Yeah.
sad to hear that you went through that, and we weren't super in touch during that time, and that makes me even sadder because like I could have reached out or whatever, and I
No.
didn't because we whatever.
Hey
we were
man, I'll
chatting,
tell
but-
you right now, if you had reached out, I probably wouldn't have replied to you. So
Yeah.
don't even worry
Well,
about it.
Yeah.
But
know?
I'm happy to hear that you're sort of coming on the other side of it, and that you've figured out a way to sort of to get back in the game, man. Because the game never stopped; it just changed.
Nope.
We're still trying
Exactly it.
We're still trying to do it.
100%.
So,
Everyone needs to pivot. Yeah.
yeah, man.
You're
So
totally right. Game never stops. Doesn't wait for anyone. Just keeps
No.
going.
So, but like just to build on one thing that you said there, the whole disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, don't blah blah, which is it's important to put that out there. But I also think that it's super important to share and normalize as much as possible these types of experiences and this especially now with what people are struggling with, but anytime really. And it's one of the things that I've become more aware of and learned more about through this pandemic is like, mental health is a very real thing, and it shouldn't be a taboo thing. And like I think one thing that seems to be very, very helpful is to just be able to talk to each other about it without feeling further self-conscious and weird. And so like if we could all just be more comfortable and make others feel comfortable at saying, hey, like I don't feel so great. I feel kind of bummed out. I feel this, I feel that. I think that'd be a really good thing. So thanks for bringing, opening up and being willing to share that. Because I think for a lot of people that will hit
Oh, man.
home as just like, oh, okay, that it's okay that
Especially
that
now.
I went through this or that I'm going through this or whatever, and that
Yep.
there's a way to deal with it. Yeah.
It is my like absolute pleasure to do that, and that point is so damn important because it's another way, especially for musicians again, because this is like all I know, but it's another way that these two things are very incompatible in general. The whole idea of like admitting that you are really screwed up on a deep level mentally versus on the other side you have to put on this facade of being a perfect everything's together musician
Yes.
in order to be hired for stuff. You don't want to be a liability, like
Yeah.
if someone thinks that you're like a mental wreck, then they're not going to hire you for a tour because like who knows, you may just completely implode on the road and then they're just gonna
Yeah.
it's going to be a disaster. So like these two things again are like somewhat incompatible in our industry.
Yeah.
Talking
And-
openly
yeah,
about how you yourself are screwed up versus the face that everyone historically has tried to put on, which is that we all have all of our shit together all the time,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which none of us do. Obviously, we all know that, but that's kind of the game that us musicians play, isn't it? Like,
Yes.
like
Yeah,
we all
and that-
walk around like all our shit's together.
Yeah.
Hire
That's
me.
the awesome thing about. I mean, that's definitely one of the awesome things about when shit started to go fucky for me was
Yeah.
realizing, starting to see it in other people, which is terrible, but just see like, oh, this person's having the exact same shit as me. Even just social anxiety. I'd go and be like, man, I'm so fucking weird. These people are just fucking, they're just judging me, and it's
Yeah.
like everybody kind of thinks that at certain times, depending on the situation. But
Totally.
I thought it was just me. Um,
Yeah.
but
And,
yeah.
really like it's going to be a constant rub. That can't be beaten because like on the one hand, people get hired because of how perfectly they play their instrument.
Yes.
So like
Yeah.
you can't, and you can't deny that that's something we should all strive for is like perfection on our instrument because then
Yeah.
we'll get great gigs. But
Mhm.
like on the personal side, on the mental side, that has meant in a lot of cases that musicians have to clam up and not talk to each other about these problems because any show of weakness means that maybe somebody else will just get the gig over you next time
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So
There's the
yeah, I
fear
think
of
it's
it.
really it's so my pleasure to even have this type of a platform to like talk about this kind of thing. And I know that you guys have also, which I think is great. But like I think more musicians need to like give us space to be screwed up in each other's presence and still like hire us for gigs next time.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
'Cause-
because the treatments are out there, and like whether it's psychiatry or whether it's like medicine, which I've been on medicine for fucking ages.
yeah,
It's and like it's one of those things that like sure, your initial struggle with it will probably be like the worst, or at least I found that with me. And then you get kind of a handle on it, and okay, well, this is the sort of thing I should probably avoid, and this is the sort of thing that I could deal with. Like
mm,
for me, I can't get like fucked up all the time, and you hear about like rock stars that are drinking all the time and all that shit. I can't do that because I'll just get really bummed out and I'll get really anxious, and it'll just be bad for my mental health. I have to take care of myself and get like some sleep, and
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, yeah,
The other
And why are
thing,
they getting so fucked up? Why do they need to? That was
that's
the thing we
exactly
yeah.
it.
touched on
Yeah,
in the mental health
yeah,
podcast too. Is like they're not just doing it because it's fun. A lot of that is
yeah,
to suppress some of these other things that are going on.
yeah.
The other
And I think you
thing
mentioned
that
also too, Al had mentioned. Go ahead, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say, like, I'm not sure how we reconcile that, like, um, being compassionate for people's situations, and but also like everybody putting on the tough facade, like nothing's ever wrong, and I've always got my shit together, and that's how you get hired and whatever. Like, I don't know how we reconcile that, but I also know that I could literally, knock on wood, I could literally sprain my wrist, and if I could play guitar well enough, I could still get a gig. You know what I mean?
Sure,
And
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
and people
Sure,
would
and
be,
you'd
Get
probably
through it.
not tell them that you sprained your wrist
Yeah.
before you got there.
or I
Kind of thing.
would, I'd be like, oh man, I messed up my hand.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully it's good enough. And I would get compassion, I feel. People would be like, oh, how's your hand? How's the hand? How's the hand? Kind of thing. And I'd be like, oh, it's all right. Like, I think I'll be okay. And, as long as I'm like not severely letting down the gig, like, I could probably ill-advised to play through an injury like that, but I could still get hired and do that.
Yeah.
But it's just what you guys are saying. It's like if you express emotional, injury, I guess, for lack of a better term, it's like all of a sudden everybody's like, whoa, like let's secretly
Yeah.
let's secretly
That's a
get rid of
great
this guy. I don't know how we reconcile
Well, that
that,
just
but
proves that there's a. Yeah, no, that just proves that there's a stigma on the mental side that there just isn't on the physical side, right? Because you're absolutely right. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you show up and you're literally bleeding from your fingers, and you still play the gig, people will be like, "Wow, that guy's badass."
Yeah, yeah.
but if you show up and you're like, "Oh man, I'm feeling pretty severe anxiety," and you like show
Yeah.
some side effects from that,
yeah,
people will be like, "Oh, who's this guy?" Like,
yeah.
man,
Yeah.
so
So
true.
I
How?
don't know.
It's
How
just
do
the
we-
fear of the unknown, right?
Yeah.
'Cause,
Yeah.
well, even one thing before I was kind of when I first started having issues with this, until I had like started to really like be affected, Will was of the opinion, it's like, I don't really know about panic attacks. This is when I was young. I was like 18. He's like, I don't really know. Like, I don't think he really believed in them almost, and people
Mhm.
around me didn't believe that they exist. Same with depression. It's like, oh, well, that person's just really sad and they'll figure it out. And it's like, well, it's kind of different. I don't know how it's different, but it is different. I
Right.
feel different, like
Yeah.
there's a difference between just being sad all the time and being depressed. And there's a difference between like, I guess anxiety is a hard one I don't know what the comparison would be with that for that, but Yeah,
Well,
no, it's
it's an
definitely,
interesting point. It's like, where else in modern day news have we heard any examples of people not believing people when they say things that haven't happened to the first group of people? You know,
Yeah.
like,
yeah, yeah,
where else could we possibly look to find examples of
yeah,
someone not believing something that hasn't happened to them personally? You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
that's
yeah,
that's kind of a human nature pitfall right there, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yep. But I mean, at least we can talk about it sort of frankly and openly here, and maybe that's a start of,
Yep.
of at least putting that
A
good
funny
energy
side
out
note,
there.
and you might have mentioned this, Al, on an earlier podcast or when we were talking. John Mayer, who I'm like a massive fan of, has had vocal issues, right?
Mhm.
And for the longest time, and he ended up saying, "Oh, I had two granulomas on my vocal cords." And I remember looking into this. Granulomas are just like a hardened spots on your vocal cords.
Mhm.
And I'm like, isn't that just a what's it called? Oh
Nodes.
God, it's not a polyp. What's no? Like, isn't that the same thing? And you were like,
Yeah.
well, maybe he said granulomas because he doesn't want to spook his record label,
100%.
so that they won't drop him. You know,
Mhm.
because like I don't think I'm not a doctor. I should say that so often, but like I'm pretty sure that's what a vocal note is. Like, so I don't know. It's the same thing. You know, it's like that fear of being like, you know, weak and then like
Ostracized.
being thrown
Yeah.
to the curb.
Well, I mean, I've
100%.
definitely.
Love
It
it.
literally just happened to me. One of the artists that I MD for, we were putting on a Christmas show, and I needed a one of the guys who played in the band before, a guitar player, singer, and so he came, and I was like, okay, so you're gonna have to sing these few leads with the artist, and then whatever. And literally, it wasn't until he got there and like halfway through the first rehearsal when we were making small talk, where he's like, "Yeah, dude, I'm literally just recovering from like I had surgery on my vocal cords because they were so screwed up."
Wow.
Ooh.
But he like just like neglected to mention that until after
Yeah.
he got the gig, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
yeah,
like
yeah.
we're all so guilty of that. And I can't even blame him for it. He's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he's awesome, dude. I love that guy. And he did the gig and he sounds awesome. But like we probably shouldn't have been gigging or with his voice still because he had
Yes.
pretty much
Still recovering.
fresh out of vocal surgery. But
Yeah.
that's what we're pushed to in order to.
Yeah.
And I mean I've heard it from other industries too, like as a dancer, you know, I've done a couple musicals in my career and like hanging out with dancers and talking to them. Like the worst thing for your career ever is to be pregnant,
Hmm.
right?
What?
Because your body's gonna change and then like maybe you won't
Sure.
be in shape afterwards or whatever, and you have to do all this work to get back. So like being pregnant as like a dancer is stigmatized
Mm.
to
I
the
didn't
point
know
where like
that.
a lot of people like won't tell people that they're pregnant until like maybe and they'll be like 2 or 3 months pregnant as they're getting close to the end of a contract. I've seen this happen, and then they'll keep it completely themselves. They'll finish the contract. They'll like pump out the kid. They'll like work out super hard for 2 months, and like nobody will know necessarily, beside like their close circle of friends, of course,
Mm-hmm.
that they've had a child.
Jeez.
And then they'll go for auditions, you know what I mean, and like get an
Yeah.
audition or whatever, and like then they'll, then people start to know, oh, they actually have like a 3-month-old kid.
Yeah. But they just kept it.
Yeah, where
quiet
did
the whole
that
time.
come from?
Wow.
Just totally because like
Wow.
because again, it's the same thing, sort of like all these things that are like they're natural to us. It's like part of life, but the nature of the performing arts is such that it can really be harsh to us in those areas.
Yeah.
Where we feel
Yeah,
the need
well,
to cover
especially
it
because
up.
there's someone waiting to take that spot. There's like 20 people waiting to just be like, I would love that job.
20,000 people, yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
totally, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's tough.
Say the thing.
Well, I have some other questions about the actual bass. If we-
Oh yeah, let's
Oh,
do
there
it.
you go.
Actual
Switch gears.
bass. Let's go. Let's get out of this cesspool.
Yeah,
Of,
this
But
is
I don't know how to segue because I'm not that good of a broadcaster. But I have some
You already
bass
have,
questions.
man.
So I've been fortunate enough to be mixing a lot of records lately, which is dope. But one thing that I've been having trouble just hearing, shaping, finding is the bass and the low end, which I know is pretty common amongst people who are mixing music because well, sound systems don't put out low frequencies in a great way oftentimes, and it can be sort of hard to just sort of nail down the relationship between like the kick drum and the bass guitar and stuff like that. And I'm so it got me thinking about just bass guitar in general, and you're always a guy who has had great tone in my opinion, and just a generally like a very large, thick sound, but also like you were saying sort of at the beginning of the episode, like very supportive. It's like a soft sort of cushion under which the band,
like a warm hug, man.
Yeah, a warm hug, but also a thick, nasty hug. Sometimes if you need that, sometimes you need too. But anyway, so it just got me thinking about that kind of stuff. And then as we were chatting about doing the show, we've done episodes in the past just talking about the approach to actually like how do you hit your instrument, or pick your instrument or pluck or whatever you want to say, like the attack on an instrument, and just sort of how you're approaching your tone from just right from the instrument. Forget pedals, forget amps, and I feel like with bass there's a ton of nuance, and I'm just curious what your approach is. Are you consciously thinking about this stuff? Are you you just feel it out like oh, here comes the bass. The bass is coming out. Nice.
Man, that's so awesome, and I probably write a whole book, man. So
Yeah.
stop me if we're getting.
I'll be waiting.
Too crazy. But tone on the bass is not just tone. It's like if you have a good tone on a bass, then your groove is also going to be better. And if you have a bad tone on bass, you can't groove properly. Which is, I don't think necessarily true of almost any other instrument, but it's kind of like what you were saying, like part of it is how you feel like it's like a, well, that is my words, like a warm hug, but like it's like a big fat tone, but that also contributes to the actual groove between you and the drummer and the other instruments. Because the bass is very much like a mortar, in the bricks. It's like the bass is what fits in between all the other things and kind of glues everything together. So having the proper tone for that, I feel, is like probably more important than almost anything else on this instrument, is getting the tone right, besides like maybe playing the right notes, for example. Does that make sense? Like,
That
kind
makes
of
a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, man, yeah, and you're right, it is very nuanced, and it's like it's a lot in like the hands and how you play the thing. But yeah, I personally like a warmer, like you said, like a kind of gravitate towards a warmer tone, than like an attack one. I mean, like if you think about a lot of metal bands, pretty much like the lows and mids are like rolled off, and you only hear like the percussive high end definition. I think that sounds cool in that context, but for a lot of what we're doing, like folky stuff or country stuff, like I really do enjoy that warmer thing, which tends to help really glue all of the other instruments together. Like I said, like the mortar, and that comes from the settings for sure on the bass, but it also just comes from like how you play and where you play on the instrument. So like on the bass, for example, it's like the new, like changing where your right hand goes by like half an inch makes a giant difference as far as the tone. So like if I play, if I do the Jocko thing and like play near the back, like you get that sort of like really, so it's a little more tinny and a little more metallic, but then if I move that even an inch, then already it's like so different. Then if I play it here, kind of on the neck, it's like even bigger and warmer. So like making these decisions about even like where to play each passage, like from here to here to here, and I'm moving my fingers about like a centimeter every time. That in itself makes a huge difference. And then obviously like the settings and everything. I've got this on passive. This is just a P bass, classic like Fender P bass going on. And I've got it in passive mode, so I can't even EQ the thing really. But bass tone is really interesting in a band because a lot of the frequencies that you hear when I'm just playing by myself get completely covered up when you're playing in a group.
Mm.
In bass, unlike most instruments, the lower you go, the more it sticks out in a mix. Like as a guitar player, obviously you guys, when you're
Yeah.
soloing, what's the first thing you do when you solo? You go, wee, you're like up here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because that's what like soars on top of the whole mix, right? Like
Yeah.
that's like the
Yeah.
exciting, super cool part about playing a guitar solo. But for bass, it's like the low E string and maybe on a 5 string, like the low B string, like that is the most you're gonna stick out,
Right.
right? It's the opposite on this instrument. Um, so, I mean, the decisions as far as like how to play the thing and like where to go, as far as like which octaves and stuff. That's stuff that like bass players lose sleep over. Literally, like,
Which is
do I
crazy.
do I do I play this here, or do I play it here,
Yep.
because it means completely different things.
Mm.
But as far as like the tone itself in a band, like maybe what you're hearing now is the sound that I want to sound like in a band. But if I wanted in a band mix to sound like this, I might actually be EQ'd something like this in a band because like 3/4 of the top half of the treble of the bass disappears in a mix completely. So if you've got like this sort of like, this might be overly tinny for us, right? It's like,
Yeah. Sounds pretty hyped.
but in a band, yeah, it's pretty tinny, it's pretty up there, zingy.
Yeah.
You hear all that stuff.
Yeah.
But in a band, if I actually were to play like that, by the time it comes out to the audience, it'll sound like this
Sure.
Gotcha.
because of just the nature of how the
Masking,
mix goes,
yeah.
I feel, yeah. The other instruments cover up all of that tinny stuff, and you get the nice kind of range that
Especially
you're
comparing
looking
you
for.
to like an acoustic guitar. The acoustic guitar is just gonna be like, you know what I
Totally.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. At least that's how I see it. So like you kind of have to, if you really want it to sound good out there, you kind of have to make it a little cringe for yourself,
Mm.
in order for it to like
Interesting.
come out properly. And it's such a big deal, man. It's such a big deal for us bass players. I had a funny story. One of the last gigs I played this year was like a live stream thing. It was a professionally done live stream. Me, guitar player, bass player, drummer, and a really, really great singer. And the guy who's doing the mix was a bass player. So I'm like, oh, sick, that's great. This guy knows what he's talking about or whatever. And so like in the room, I had this really nice, big, fat, warm sound going on that I really liked. And as a result, if when things really got going, I was like digging in and like, I was, because it sounded so nice and big and fat in the room. So I was playing pretty hard with my right hand, doing, or whatever, which is sort of like it sounds too much, but like in the room when your tone is coming out there, it feels great to do that, and the treble doesn't come through. But then the guy who's mixing it obviously must have been more of a fan of that like metal tone or whatever. Mixed it when it was so in such a way where like he took out almost all the low end bass frequencies and like added in a bunch of highs, and it was like so clicky that like all you heard was me like slapping the strings, and it was so like, and it was like toxic for me to listen to. Like, oh, man, I can't listen to this, and I felt like the groove wasn't there anymore, but I know it was in the room. It felt great. So like the tone is like everything on this instrument, man. And it's really, really important to get that right. Quality instrument, good strings, good amp, all of that kind of stuff.
Paying attention to those things you were saying too, like the little nuances. One thing that Al wrote down, and I've heard bass players say this before: length of note.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
And the thing that bothers me is the same with me. It's like I been taking lessons with Justin Abedin, and he keeps on saying these like little things. He's like, oh yeah, the pick you're using, man, like, or like even the way that you hold your pick. You know what I mean? He's like, oh, you can switch it up to do this, and I'm like, now I'm like starting to sweat this stuff. It's like, well, is that guy doing something that I'm not doing? Should I be doing that thing?
Maybe, dude.
Yeah,
but I mean, like this, and again, this is like maybe I'm biased because I love this instrument and I feel like all of these things are like, I mean, every instrument that's gonna be true to a point. But like for example, length of note. So like I'll play the same. I'll just play eighth notes 2 different ways, and we'll like see what the difference is. So this is the first way. You know, I'm playing every note the same, right?
Yeah.
And then let's try it this way. You know, so like one note slightly longer, one note slightly shorter, one
Yeah.
note slightly louder, one note slightly quieter, and all of a sudden it's like there's a groove there. You know,
Yeah.
whereas before if I'm just going like this, there's like nothing there.
It's a computer, pretty much.
It's a computer versus like.
Yeah.
And I like first kind of heard this vibe with like Sly and the Family Stone. You know, they've really got this sort of like bounce to how to just normal eighth notes, and I'm like, oh, that grooves all of a sudden like out of nowhere. You know, you play it with a drummer or whatever, and then you've got something. So it's like the on the beat note is kind of shorter and more percussive, and then the off the beat note is longer. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Kind of goes with like the snare drum. If you think, gah,
Yeah.
gah, gah. You know, it's like,
Right.
and that makes so like length of note. Yeah, that's hugely important. And like I said, these are the things that us bass players like literally lose sleep over. Like, how do we play this stuff properly to make
Yeah.
it feel good? Yeah, length of note and the octave that you're playing it in.
Well, the
Like-
funny thing is too, because
Completely different vibe. Yeah.
it's like, because a lot of the time the job is not to play a ton of notes,
Mhm.
but it's like how you play the notes. Then the job becomes, well, this guy's better at playing those few notes than you are, and the ways that he's better, it's hard to describe. You know, like length of note now, but without the internet, it'd be hard to nail some of these things down. Because I could see, if I've been playing bass for 20 years and I just played along with drummers, I could see that sort of naturally happening, like, you know.
Right.
But like, I wouldn't even know I'm doing that, which
Sure.
is cool.
And I'm sure most people don't, who
Yeah.
haven't maybe like taken a lot of lessons to really have it
Yeah.
like sort of put in front of them in that way. But you just pick up, you listen to. So if you like, if bass players are listening to Sly and the Family Stone and like Larry Graham and all those early bass players that really got funky and like got the groove going, they would just play like that anyway, not really necessarily know what it is. But at the
Yeah.
same time, if you're a band leader, once again, back to the thing where you're just looking for the perfect guy, like
Yeah.
you're like there'll be a bass player in there who's like, oh, I get it, playing it like this will sound good, and they'll just do it, and the band leader's like, oh, this feels good, so I'm just gonna hire that guy over that guy, and not
Yes.
even necessarily know why, or even if they know
Yeah.
why, they're not gonna say why. So
Yeah,
like, yeah, all this stuff is totally this is bass player only stuff. No one's gonna tell you unless they're really, really listening and really know their way around the instrument.
Like
not
if you
gonna
have to
tell
have a
you
really
that-
good bass buddy.
Yeah, exactly. They're never gonna
Yeah.
like give you that feedback. That's for you
Yeah.
to figure out.
So I find the same thing with acoustic guitar. That's why I went to Justin, because I'm like, when I hit an acoustic guitar, it does not sound the same as when fucking Al hits an acoustic guitar. It pisses me off.
Eh. Well, that's the only thing
Al's
I
just
got.
sitting
what
back
you're
being like,
I don't know.
what can I say, man?
I don't know. It's the only instrument I play, so.
You play other instruments.
So building on this idea, which is already so cool, I was listening to a podcast called "I'd Hit That," which I don't know if you guys are familiar with or not. It's about drummers, and they the guy interviews some very, very heavy drummers. And there was an episode with Eddie Bayers, who's a serious session player. He's been on a ton of records, and they were going over the quote unquote, I think he called them money grooves. There was like 5 grooves that you really wanted to be able to play very well. And if you could do that, that covered a lot of bases, not like, in the baseball sense, not in the bass guitar sense, for you, like musically speaking. So I'm wondering if that relates, because obviously bass players and drummers are always trying to work together as best they can. Does that relate to you? And do you think about, are there sort of a few main grooves you're like, okay, here's how I'm going to approach this type of drum beat in this type of genre, or like if it's this genre but it's the same drum beat, then I might actually do it a little bit differently? Is that something you've ever thought critically about, or is that sort of something you just feel as you go?
Definitely somewhere in the middle Again, the thing that I love about bass is that it's fully complementary, right? So it's you can't really in the same way that drummers can say like these are 5 grooves that are money grooves that you have to know. You can't say that on bass because it's perfectly in between drums and guitar basically. It's like
Yeah.
a percussive guitar. So like where do you fit, where do you fit in terms of like creating something from scratch? You really don't. You have to complement what's already there. You have to complement the drummer and you have to complement the guitar player or the chordal instrument or whatever at the same time. You're right in the middle there. So you can't really say there's like 5 money grooves for bass without like referencing like your typical like or whatever. But as far as like actually just a typical groove, there aren't any because that's not really how bass works compared to drums. But if you're trying to come up with a part that you want to fit in with a drum part that's already there, then for sure there's a couple things. I always go to the bass drum first. So like the bass and the bass drum need to be like this, man. They have to lock in, and it's probably the closest relationship that any 2 musicians on stage have, is the bassist and then the drummer's right foot. It's like the basically those 2 things in any sort of a energetic song or any sort of a live setting, the bass and the bass drum basically are supposed to combine into one sound. It's like one instrument. So you got the attack and the oomph from the bass drum and the note of the bass kind of like form something that's greater than the sum of the parts. And it's very, very exciting. So the first thing that I'm always listening for is the bass drum, if there's a part that the drummer's brought in, because that's going to inform the rhythms that I play for sure. Depending on whether the drummer's going boom, dun, 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 on bass drum, then I'm going to be playing boom, boom, boom on the bass. And if the drummer's doing something else, I'm probably going to start with that too. Yeah. So definitely listening to that, but also, you got to know the style of music that you're playing too. So like, if you're talking about a style that's got a really ingrained bass part to it, and you should try to understand that style before you got out to play it. So like if you're talking about a Cuban style or whatever with like a bass tumbao, then there's a certain rhythm you're supposed to be playing on bass. So like 1, 2, 3, 4. That's like you need to start there with the Cuban style music or whatever. Bosses like start in this vibe. So understanding the style and sort of what's expected of you is very important too. But then as far as actually playing with someone, I mean, the lament of a lot of bass players is that if you've got like a terrible drummer, you can't push them around and tell them what to do because the drums just have priority over the bass as far as how much impact they have in a band. Yeah. So you can come to the gig knowing all sorts of stuff about what should be or whatever, and then if the drummer is just playing something else, you probably just have to go with them if you want it to sound good. Yeah. Regardless, the drummer drives the bus for sure, but the bass player like complements it and makes it fun for everyone else. Makes the trip fun. The drummer's the driver, but the bass player's like the grandma who like is like turning around to all the kids, being like, okay. You know what I mean? That's my job. Is like, this is gonna be fun, guys. Let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Do you
drummer keep your eyes on the road, and I'm just gonna make good vibes for everyone.
Do you leave do you offset your note from the kick at all to like leave room for the actual attack of the bass drum? It's like I know Mark Rinkin does a really good job of this in particular. I'm just curious how people think about this, but Mark showed me this when I first started hanging out with him. It's like because we were doing a Pro Tools session or whatever. He's like, just nudge the bass back, however much.
How many milliseconds?
And that, well, I actually have a thing. I have a thing called on Pro Tools called 8 question marks, because like the way the controls work, if you push question mark, it nudges. And I have my nudge set to 10 samples, so it's a large nudge. I'm not actually sure how many samples it does, but if somebody's playing 2 on top, which I do all the time when I record my own acoustic, because I'm trying to play with energy with the drums, and then I listen back to them like that's super on top. So I'll just select the whole part and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the question mark, and then I'll play it back. And usually that feels good. I'll adjust from there if it doesn't or whatever. But that's one of the things I do. But that started because Mark was like, yeah, just nudge it back, because then instead of getting like, boom, you get boom, and it sounds like fatter and something that's really cool. I wondered if you messed around with that as well.
Definitely have, but not maybe for that exact reason. I just as tone is crucially important, and bass players lose sleep over that. We I guess we're losing a lot of sleep, but we also lose sleep over the feel, over the time feel, and so I think about that a lot, but not necessarily as a leave space for the bass drum, as much as I think about it as like just a feel for the song kind of thing. Because it can be more than just leaving space for a bass drum. It can be like really far behind or really ahead, and both of those things have profound effects on how the whole piece of music actually sounds. Like on one hand, maybe you've got a band like Earth, Wind and Fire live, where if you like listen to their live albums, they're literally speeding up the entire time.
Yeah.
Like they'll start like like if you listen to like Earth, Wind and Fire live in Rio or whatever, they start off like in the Stone maybe like 20 BPM faster than the album version, and they'll end at like 40 BPM faster than the album version. They're speeding up the whole time, and that gives that like you're saying, Al, it gives like energy like crazy. So if the bass is always ahead, it does give sort of like a forward momentum. Really, you're pushing everything ahead, but it can be too much. And then if you go like really far behind the beat, then you're in like D'Angelo territory or whatever, where like the back phrasing is like super key part of the personality of the thing, right? Like, and you can't just play it on bass. You need the drums to go along with it or whatever. But like,
Sure.
to push behind like that is like has a very, very cool like badass kind of feel to it when you do it properly.
Yeah.
And I think on some of those D'Angelo things, like it was Pino Palladino that played on the D'Angelo.
Yes.
Stuff.
Oh yeah.
And he's like he's a god of bass.
Yeah.
But I heard rumors, and like maybe somebody can substantiate this or not, that they did that for those sessions too. Like he was already playing behind, because he's playing with like some of the greatest drummers ever, like Questlove or whatever. So like they're able to like do this stuff. They're really good musicians. But then in the studio, maybe sometimes they even took it further behind.
Oh, I see.
To just give it that like super crazy loping like egg type groove, where it's like not even.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing. 100% the placement. But yeah, like I don't really see it as leaving space for the bass drum. I just see it as like a purposeful decision to have the song feel a certain way. Whether or not you want that like nervous energy and forward momentum, or whether or not you want this like super laid back confidence. It's kind of sort of more associated with R&B, I guess. The further you like sort of back phrase. But I mean, if you think about it, singers do it all the time, right? You call it back phrases.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Some of them don't even think about it, and
they don't even think about it. It's just like you listen to sax players in jazz, like you back phrase all the time.
Yeah.
If you call it back phrasing as a bass player, you'll probably just get fired from every gig that you do, because you're supposed to groove with people. You're not supposed to like back phrase on the drummer. You're supposed to be with the drummer. But if you come up with an idea of like, okay, this song I need to be kind of this little tiny bit behind in order for it to sound the way I want it to sound, then you're cool again. You're not gonna get fired.
Do you have any tips on how to like
just play the
actually
aloof thing and be
practice
like, I
that?
didn't do it.
Listen to that,
Yeah.
I guess. Like
Listen to styles of music that have
like
that.
you couldn't possibly play the D'Angelo feel until you've like absolutely worn out your copies of Voodoo and like Brown Sugar. Those two albums. You got to wear those out, man. You got to feel it, and you got to like get it in your body, and then you can just start playing along to those kinds of things. But I like listening is number one. Like I think because bass can be such a simple instrument, a lot of times we're just going like, it's like this isn't technically hard to do this, but so much of it has to do with like understanding the history of it and where things come from and knowing what you want to get out of a certain piece of music, that us bass players, we can practice our instrument by listening. to other people playing our instrument, you know?
Hmm.
Like once you get a certain amount of technique out of the way, just listening and really trying to understand, you know, what makes your favorite bass line, and then trying to emulate it later. But like you get it inside your body first, and then you can start trying to be legit at like putting it back out there. So if
That
you
makes
really love that feel, then just like listen to D'Angelo over and listen to Pino just crushing these crazy behind the beat things,
fucking guy.
and then like play along with it and see if you can get anywhere close.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then get your buddies together and be like, "Hey, drummer, can you just play like just a groove for a second? Let me just destroy it." You know, trying to play behind the beat
Yeah.
for a while, and like see how to do it. But yeah, a lot of bass player practicing, I think, is just listening, man. Listening and thinking. Again, because it's not a choppy instrument. It's a
Yeah.
lot in your mind and a lot in your heart. I think. Not to
Well,
get too hippie on it,
it's
but
Oh, well
it's
said.
cool because it's the same with drums. It's like just the prospect that you could get a guy who has all the fucking chops in the world on drums, but there's another guy who literally like, yeah, he crushes those, whatever grooves he's doing, like AC/DC's drummer. You know what I mean? Like he's not hired to do crazy like gospel fills, but I don't think. I bet you gospel drummers would do fine in that band. But it's like it's cool that there's a guy for that specializes in that and
Yeah.
like has that groove. It's one of the things that you were saying with the listening kind of reminds me of. I mean, so if someone tried to explain like swing, like swing feel to someone who's never heard swing, like
Mhm.
it'd be really hard to have them replicate it because it'd be like, well, one of
Right.
them's long and one of them's short.
I
And
mean, you got an example of that all the time, like in classical musicians when you get like a classical string section to try to swing eighth notes to in like a jazz
Yeah.
tune or whatever. It's like it's heinously bad. It's like
Yeah.
so bad. Da, 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 because they just don't know how to do it. But it's
Yeah.
because they don't listen to it. It's not in their body, right? The whole
Yeah.
classical way of playing is so different from like on our side of the fence kind of thing. That when the two worlds collide, it's very obvious that they don't listen to and love that stuff as much, maybe, or
Yeah.
they're not capable of playing with
And
that
vice
style,
versa.
and
I'm
vice
sure.
versa.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you kidding me? You get a jazz upright bass player in an orchestra, like they're gonna get
Yeah.
friggin' booed off stage probably in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, really, it's like yeah, you listen, man. You gotta listen. You identify what it is that you love, why you love it, and then just listen to it so much that like you start thinking like that person. You know, it's like when you practice something long enough at home, then you'll find that it starts seeping into your playing when you're playing a gig, right? The same thing. If you
Yeah.
listen to a certain band that you love over and over and over again, then the influences of that band are going to start seeping into your own playing, whether you like it or not, subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
Like I play licks sometimes, and I don't even remember where they're from, but I know that that's something that maybe in like the infantile stages of me playing the bass, was listening to this over and over again. And I'm like, this is a lick from somewhere, and I know I love it. I don't even know where it's from anymore, but I'm playing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
it
think
makes-
I think
that makes-
listening is number one. Listening and really thinking about what's going on, and then just trying to internalize that, and then it'll just come out. It has to, right? It comes out when you're playing.
better.
One thing that we haven't mentioned is that Ben is a excellent backup singer, excellent singer, but sings a lot of backups in the projects that he's involved in. I haven't heard much Ben Miller lead vocals, but I would like to.
There's
But-
some out there if you know where to look.
Do you have any tips for because Mike and I have gone on record so many times saying how important it is to if you're able and if it's something that you're interested in doing, being a not even like a super strong backup singer, but a capable one who's willing to jump on a part, even a shout thing if you're not like a super confident, strong singer, but adding that asset to a band that you're in is super, super huge, especially for people looking to get hired. Like that's such a big thing. Do you have
Yeah.
any tips on how to find backup parts, how to sort of fit in vocally, what people could maybe aspire to do if they don't feel like they're a great singer, but they're super obviously great at their instrument and want to get hired, want to get into that world a bit. Like, what would you suggest?
Sure. Yeah, those are all really, really good points. First of all, I completely agree. Back to the like who's gonna get hired versus not who's gonna get hired. Like, again, you gotta have all your mental shit together. But also, if you sing backups, then immediately you're gonna get hired over someone who
Yeah.
doesn't sing backups, if that's at all what they're looking for. So, singing backups can be really, really key for your employability as a musician, and it does really, really add a lot. And a lot of people are very grateful for it. So yeah, a very important skill to have, at least like at a mediocre, passable level. Definitely. Um, I definitely did take lessons. I took vocal lessons for about a year or so to just to figure out and get my technique in the right place. Because I don't know how what your guys' experience was like, but coming from learning an instrument where you can literally look at your fingers and be like, "Oh, this looks wrong. I need to make this look like this," or literally have someone be able to like take your finger and be like, "No, it goes here," versus vocal technique, which is like, okay, so you feel that maybe that like clenching down sort of here, like by your Adam's apple, does that feel weird? Or like, how's your breath feel? Or like, where's the breath coming from? Like,
Yeah.
you literally can't reach inside someone's mouth and be like, this is what you have to do with your throat in order
Yeah.
to sing properly. It's like really, really hard to just know what to do, even by looking up videos on YouTube or whatever. So I found private lessons to be invaluable in terms of like getting my vocal technique proper. So
Who'd you study
if
with?
I studied with this really, really cool guy named Ken. In he was out of a music school in like kind of South Markham. Like I'm trying to remember exactly where it was, like McCowan and Finch, kind of, or like McCowan and Steeles, like up there.
Okay.
Ken de los Santos was his name. He taught out of a school, and it was me. This is when I had my day job, back when I was doing like my day job thing. So I was like coming there from my office, with like office clothes on, and it was a bunch of like 10-year-olds running around. So it was like 10-year-olds and like 30-year-old Ben, because this guy Ken is like a master of just like listening to you. Because yeah, like teaching singing is really hard because everyone wants to get different stuff out of it, and if you can't take someone's vocal cords and place them in the right spot, it's really hard to teach it, I feel. But Ken
Yeah.
was really good at putting it in terms that I could understand.
It's tough because with singing is, yeah, just like you said, you can't see it.
Yeah.
And like as you go on, like you develop an awareness of like feelings that you didn't realize you had before, or like even just breathing, like being able to like
Yeah.
sing into your nose versus not. It's like that's something you just won't get on day one,
Absolutely.
which is very frustrating.
So I do think that a certain amount of lessons just on that instrument is really, really important, because personally, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there I know that are just naturals and can figure it out. But like for me, there was no way I was going to get to the like very, very moderate level of technique that I have without having taken lessons to like understand how this stuff is supposed to work and how your breath is supposed to work and everything. So a couple lessons, even just to get you on the right path, I feel is like really important to be a good backup singer. And then once again, it's listening, but in this sense, it's listening to your lead singer. Um, I know, Al, you've talked about this before, but like blending and obviously pitch is like so important as a backup singer, that like
Mhm.
whatever your lead singer is doing as far as little inflections or anything like that, and how they're pronouncing words, you want to listen to that stuff and like match all of it, like match it as much as you possibly can as far as your note. So being really, really sensitive to listening to how it's coming out of the lead singer, and then just trying to kind of in the same way as like a bass plus bass drum equals profit,
Yeah.
sort of like lead singer plus backup singer equals profit. It's like more than the sum of their parts sort of thing. You have to blend yourself into whatever your lead singer is doing. And then to practice, like, because, practicing backups, God, it's awful. It's like practicing at home, singing a weird backup line that doesn't sound good by
Yep.
itself is just like the worst thing ever. So, if you're lucky enough to have a car, like that's the spot, man. So
Mm.
for me, like to what you were saying, Al, about like hearing backup parts, to me, when I was really trying to improve my backup singing game, I would be driving around in the car with a song up loud, and then I still do this a lot of times. Even if there isn't a backup part, I will try to create a harmony and sing it just like as loud as I possibly can, but with good technique or whatever, in order as a way of just practicing, yeah, like hearing a harmony as opposed to hearing the melody. I guess I might have a leg up because as a bass player, I hardly hear the melody anyway. Like I'm
Yeah.
brutal with that. Like I hear drums and bass pretty much only, no matter what song it is. Like, you know, I'm like, hey, do you guys know this song? And people are like, what friggin' song is that? And you're like, oh, I can't even tell you how the melody goes. I literally just know the bass part, you know? So like maybe I have a leg up in that thing where like the melody is not even there for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just practice hearing a harmony and singing it. Helps to know a little bit of theory so you know what's going on. But again, it's just like anything, you know. You can start with a little bit of natural talent, but it's practice. There's no kind of corner cutting. But having a car with the windows up and just being in that zone where no one can hear you, hopefully, then you just have the confidence to just go for it.
Yeah.
And I did that. I did that.
Oh,
a
I
lot.
used to practice my car all the time, man. It is the safe zone. Yeah.
Safe zone, man. It's your safe space.
One thing that I learned from you regarding backups that stuck with me, and I don't know if you called it this or not, but in my head I call them anchor notes. But it's like if you have with a basic sort of theory knowledge of each chord's got a 1, a 3, and a 5 in it, or even just knowing that the major scale's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But like whatever chord you're on, generally speaking, your harmony is gonna be anchored on one of those notes of that chord. So if you're playing a C chord,
Yes.
the melody is probably singing a C, E, or a G most of the time, especially in pop music, because now everything is just like, yeah, da, 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 like that's your melody. Like, it's a very one note sort of era
Sounds
of
like a
music
hit.
that we're in, which is, I think it sounds great.
Put a trap beat on that baby.
Yeah, but like then you, as a backup singer, get to occupy one of the other 3 notes there. And then it's kind of like when the lead singer goes up, you go up. When they go down, you go down. As a general starting point, there's a lot of great backup vocals that are very angular and go in different directions from the lead, and it sounds super, super cool. But like, if you're just sort of sitting in on a rehearsal or figuring something out on the fly, like that's a really great starting point. And I think most
if you play
absolutely
that
can find
note
that.
too.
Yeah.
Like if you physically, like I found that if I physically played that note on the guitar when I was first learning it, it would like help so much to just like play that note and then try to sing the melody.
Yes.
Totally. So yeah, this is a bit more advanced, like when you're actually in a band and you're trying to like work out a line and have it work with everybody else's line or whatever. So like let's give an example. Like what's really like Don't Stop Believing or some
Sure. Yeah, why
Don't
not?
Stop
some
Believing, yeah.
fantastic tune that none of us are sick of, like Don't Stop Believing. Okay, cool. So the key is like E, here we are. And then Al, what's the melody? Like what is so as far as anchor notes for the melody? What,
Oh, well, I guess where's the harmony? Strangers.
let's do the chorus. Let's do the chorus.
waiting.
Oh yeah, there's the
So
pre-chorus.
it's-
Okay, yeah, cool.
Oh, is that a pre-chorus?
So-
So,
so-
that's a 9, right?
The 9, exactly. So the anchor note would probably be the 9, just because that's where you come in. So like in E, that's an F sharp. So right, the 9 of it is like that's the anchor note for the melody, and pretty much that whole phrase goes around the 9, right? It goes like 9 1 9 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Or 2, I guess would be more.
And then as a 2,
Yeah.
yes.
Poor
That's
man.
what I-
Absolutely.
Don't want
A
to
poor man.
confuse people.
9.
Yeah.
You uncultured slob.
I know. Yeah. What's a
So
Fucking
so
music
then
school
as the
dropout.
backup singer, so is it like is the backup part for that starting on the 6 then? Dun, 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 dun,
Or is it starting on 7?
It might be the 7, which is a really
it's
weird.
7.
which is a really weird one, but it's such a cool sound. I mean, the chord is A, right?
But
In that pre-chorus.
it's on the
on the
four,
four chord,
so
so-
that might
Right.
actually not matter.
Well, that's actually, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I always, but this is a personal thing, maybe because I'm a bass player, I still always think of it in terms of the root of the key, not necessarily the
Sure.
chord that you're on.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like, even if we're on, so if we're in the sort of A Lydian, right?
Yes.
That's where we're at, like in that part of the song. I still think of that as a 9, just in the 9 in the key of
Yeah.
E, you know, like.
Same, yeah.
So then, yeah, for the backups, I guess it would be the 7 of E. Strangers waiting, right? That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what I usually sing. It's super rubby, but it sounds really cool to me.
Well, it's the Lydian. That's the sharp 11
Yeah.
of the key of A.
Yeah,
You're on a D sharp.
yeah. So
But it's nice because it resolves both ways. So yeah, that's definitely like if I were thinking about trying to hit those notes. But again, we have the benefit of knowing theory, so that's where this comes in.
Mhm.
Is like a certain amount of theory and ear training. So if I just hear A, I know that the sharp 11 or the Lydian note or the sharp 4 or whatever you want to call it, that's my target note. And I know that's where it is.
Sure.
So I can hear that. So like my whole line is then centered around that sharp 11. So like or whatever I do there. So I know, yeah, the anchor note really helps, and that's a hard one. We just
Yeah, that
jumped
was
right
a
to
pretty
it.
advanced.
I was thinking more of the
That's
chorus with the
incredible.
easy ones, but yeah, that's it, man. Anchor notes really help.
And
But
then
then but again, maybe some lessons will help with that. You know, taking a bit of theory and ear training so you understand what those relationships are. That'll really help you. It's not just magic anymore. Then you really know what's going
Yeah.
on.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
It's not just hit or miss. Like sometimes I get the note.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know why.
Yeah.
And if I miss the note, I don't know what I hit instead or why it sounds
Yeah.
pretty bad.
The other
Sounds good.
the other kind of starting point that applies to like that specific case is, and among others, is just go 2 notes away in your whatever your scale is for the song, your major
Sure.
scale, right? Just go 2 notes away in either direction, and that's probably gonna be a note that's going to
Hopefully.
work. You know, maybe you got to switch
It's
the
gonna be
octave
something,
of it
yeah.
or whatever. But like that's another way to try to do it, which is. But anyways, I thought that was
We basically did that there. No, we did that there. We did that there too. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the melody is. So Al went 2 notes down. You know, you went, and then you went, right. So the
Yeah.
two together definitely
so.
will work.
Sometimes that won't work, but a lot of times it works going up. Going down is the times when it gets a little tricky sometimes.
Yeah.
Also, too, I feel like
Totally.
if you've practiced this a bunch, if you're like, you'll snap into place. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it's like,
Oh,
oh
yeah.
man, 6 wasn't the note. Okay, 5.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Totally. Yeah, it's practice, man. You get the first time you try it, you're going to be useless, and the second time you try it, you're going to be slightly less useless,
Yeah.
etc., times like 4 years, until eventually, like, you can just do it, and you're good at it, and you're fast at it,
Yeah.
and you can be employable. But
That is
yeah,
a
it's
very
working just-
not undervalued skill, but almost like paid attention to skill. There are some
Mm.
guitarists that it's like, yeah, they're like, you know, they don't really even spend a ton of time on guitar, you know, like, and they don't know a lot on guitar, but they can kind of play guitar,
Mhm.
but they're amazing backup singers. And it's like, that is amazing backup singers are so much harder to find
Oh,
that
man.
play an instrument than amazing instrumentalists who don't sing. You know,
It's such a
like,
boon. Yeah, even like speaking as an MD now, who is like the
Yeah.
choice of having to like hire guys for stuff. It's like so nice to have a guitar player,
yes.
yeah, who can come to a gig and I can like make sure they're playing the right parts first, and then on top of it all to just be like, okay, and then like sing the third here in this chorus,
Yeah.
and like give me the actual like it just so next levels your band
Yes.
if you can do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, highly recommend. Especially if you're looking to go into playing in bands and stuff. Yeah, backup singing is like
Yeah.
so good and important and really adds so much. And people in the crowd respond too. Like I could play any crazy lick I want in the world on the bass guitar, and you're gonna get the one dude in the front row who's gonna be like, "Fuck yeah, bro, that was sick." But then you get three people singing just like a do 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 together, like in a really really nice in tune backups and leads and stuff, and the whole audience just cries. So
Yeah.
so like it's very important. Like let's look at the Beatles, man. Like aside from their musical genius, like
Yes.
the backups are what make that band, in my opinion, more than almost
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah.
They're so great at that, man. The harmonies are insane, and people just respond to that. It's one of those things where like you hear human voices in harmony, and it just gets people going, man.
Yep.
So to be able to bring that value to a band is like you'll be hired more.
100%.
others,
Well, it's like a
for sure.
drummer that has a great tracks rig and knows tracks and knows how to mix them, and it's like
Yeah,
even if there's a better drummer, like if the other guy knows tracks and he's pretty much just as good, you're gonna hire that guy. Like
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
One last thing on this is like we're saying, it does take a long time to get really good at this, but I would encourage people to start ASAP. And there's two ways I think you can do this, aside from just your own practice, but in a band situation, when fingers crossed we get to do that again. Rich De Silva in the chat. Shout out to Rich saying, "Hey, Ben."
oh shit.
Oh, Rich.
So, two different ways you can do that. Number one is just getting on gang vocals. There's always a song where there's a "hey" in the chorus or
Sure.
something. Set up a mic and do that. Or if
Yeah.
there's not enough mic inputs, do it anyways, because you'll get picked up in somebody else's mic. Or like team up on a mic and do it with somebody.
On the next gig, that
And-
might be enough too.
Yeah. And then number two is sing along with the lead vocal in the same pitch as them if you want, or an octave below if it's too high. Or level two of this would be try to actually sing a harmony part off mic. You're not singing into the microphone,
Sure.
but the
Yes.
audience is going to see that you are engaged with the lyric of the song. You'll see a lot of people do this. They'll sing sort of along with the lyric, and I think there's a way to do this that doesn't look super cheesy. And because in my mind I'm like, this could look really cheesy as well, but I think there's a way to do it where it's going to look like you're part of the action. But if you're not feeling super confident vocally, you're getting those reps in of like, I'm practicing singing a harmony, I'm playing my instrument at the same time, I look like I'm involved, I look like
That's
I'm
the-
jazzed about the
yeah.
lyrics of the song. So I would really encourage people, as daunting as a skill as this could be, start doing something. And there'll also be parts of the show where all you have to do is go, ooh, that's it. You're singing
Yeah.
the song's in the key of D and you have to sing a D. You could probably do that. You know what I mean? So like try to volunteer to do those parts if they're available, because until you start, it's like the YouTube thing, Ben. It's like until you post your first video, you're not doing anything. And it's like you got to just start doing
Yep.
stuff. And I think those are
Doesn't matter
some
how many
some
times you
ways.
practice it at home.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many times you do any of that stuff by yourself in your room. Until you really put it out there, you're not that.
Yeah.
You're not that thing.
So
And it's totally different, especially in the backup singing realm. Once you're playing with the band and the volume's up and everything, it's a completely different feel to start, activating your voice and singing into a mic versus just practicing at home. So yeah,
oh man,
I
mic
love
technique's a
the
whole
singing
other
off
thing.
mic.
Yeah, I think
That is a really good idea.
that's a good exercise for a lot of people. Um,
And if you don't mind, let me speak directly to bass players for a second.
Yeah,
on this,
please
'cause-
do.
'cause,
Oh.
like bass players, we got a rough go of it with singing backups because because the backup line is a linear line and the bass is also a linear line. So a lot of times if the rhythm of the bass and the rhythm of the backup part are different, that can be really really hard to do, because like we're not used to doing two separate rhythmic things at the same time.
Sure.
Or like we're very solid in our one rhythm or whatever. So like it can be very difficult. I feel like more difficult than for guitar players, because the strumming thing is sort of
Yes.
more of a like put it out of mind, and you can focus on your singing with keeping the strumming consistent.
Yep.
Whereas like the bass line has to be perfectly rhythmic in whatever rhythm's going on, but the backups may be different. So like you'll find situations where you've got like a really hard go of it with two linear lines that don't mesh together. And the only thing that I would recommend is to slow it down to like ridiculously slow speed and try to get those two things to mesh. So like, don't give up on it, but just like slow it down like crazy until you're able to get it happening at a slow speed, and then like speed it back up. One of the most like infamous examples of that is in friggin' I Want You Back. In that little breakdown, in that little breakdown part in the middle where the bass is already playing like a hard part. The bass is going like 1, 2, 3. The bass goes like, right, that thing. But then like they want you to sing like over top of that as well. Some bands, so like, I'm a little, my bass is a little loud. And then I haven't played a wedding in like half a year, so I probably suck at this now. It's like so, but like that's the kind of stuff you could be saddled with, like.
Yeah.
And, oh God.
It's like, oh, you just play bass, you gotta at least sing, man. It's like, what?
Yeah.
And obviously I'm way out of I just put myself out there, and like there was a point where I could do that, but that took like practicing like crazy. But that was like literally going like until like for forever, until like a sort of could work it up to speed slowly. And obviously I'm not there anymore because I'm out of practice with that. But like
it's all good, man.
But just slow it, just like respect yourself and have pity on yourself, and like slow it down like crazy until you actually can practice it and get it, and then just like slowly speed it up. It takes a lot of patience for sure.
Also, taking the pitch away from the vocals can be like a nice stepping stone. If you're just saying the lyrics, it also saves your voice if it's a particularly difficult part to sing.
That was the big thing for me,
Just to get the coordination, because you're trying to figure out where each syllable of each word lines up or doesn't line up with what your hands are doing, and it's quite a thing to sort of decode. But you're right, if you just slow it down and figure out each frame of it until you get it all built, then it becomes doable. But there's some crazy, like, I mean, like when I first learned the song Why Georgia by John Mayer, which I still cannot play 100% properly, but like singing and playing that the fingerpick pattern for that, it's like you just have to literally go one strum at a time, one word at a time, until you line them all up.
One syllable sometimes.
One syllable at a time.
There's no shortcut there. It's just like putting in the work and slowing it down like crazy to get that that facility together.
Yep.
And then just like anything else, you get better at it, and then it's not as hard anymore. But
then you get all the gigs.
All the gigs. All the no gigs.
Yeah.
I think
right now.
I think that's a good place to wrap us up. I got to do a thing in a second here. But dude, thanks so much for coming on, Ben. That was great. You're very generous with your time, and that was a great discussion all around.
I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here, and fan of you guys, both of you, obviously, and so I'm very grateful to have been asked to come on. So thank you for having me on, and I really hope this was somewhat helpful to somebody out there.
It's helpful to me. Screw everybody else.
No, it's my honor, man. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, man.
So everybody go check out Ben's YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/Benny the Bassman. Lots of great bass tutorial videos on there, and I mean, there's no better place to go if you want.
What's he on Instagram? What's your Instagram handle too?
Oh, Benny the Bassman. That's me.
Benny the Bassman on
At
Instagram.
Benny the Bassman on Instagram.
Very consistent branding.
Patreon.com/Benny the Bassman.
This is true.
Of course.
Jellynote.com/creators/Benny the Bassman. If you're looking to actually buy some charts
Yeah.
from me up there, yeah, you can find everything up there too. Thank you very much.
Right on, man. All right. Well, that's gonna do it for this one. We are Music Guy Podcast on Facebook as well as Instagram. musicguypodcast.com, where you can find all the past episodes, and of course also on YouTube if you want to watch things go down live and also watch the video version after the fact. You can subscribe to us there. I'm at Alro Music on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, probably YouTube also, some other places like that. And if folks are interested in getting any of their music mixed or produced, or if you need vocal tuning or editing or anything like that, I'd be happy to do that for you. So you can hit me up on any of those platforms there. Michael Hebbs is at Bruno the Meek on Instagram. If you need a great guitarist or some great slide guitar, lap steel. I gotta get my terminology right.
Lap steel.
Synth programming. Mike recently did some dope sound design stuff on one of the tracks that we've been producing for the agenda.
Just give me fucking money.
So just
want to give me money, just do it. Email me.
Hit them up. We'll see everybody next week. Thank you so much for joining us for this wonderful episode, and thanks again to Ben Miller for being a part of it.
Such a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.